Today I'm going to share with you how I updated my bathroom on a tiny little budget. All the tips, tricks, and DIYs. If that sounds great, hang tight because we're getting right into it. I want to go ahead and thank Sherwin for sponsoring today's video, and I will share more about that in a little bit. Like all good updates, you need to see exactly where we started so you know where we ended. Somewhere 21 years ago when someone decided to build this house, they thought it was a good idea to put wallpaper, and not just wallpaper, but this border that is now curling up and collecting dust. Now, I'm not saying that I am completely against wallpaper. I'm just completely against this wallpaper. If you follow me on Instagram, then you know a year ago, I was done. I was ready to remove this wallpaper and I was taking it into my own hands. So while my husband was at work, I got to work and I got out my steamer and I was pulling this stuff off the wall. You guys don't need fancy tools to get rid of your wallpaper. And if you want to paint right over it, absolutely plenty of videos to show you how to do that. But because of this border, I knew that's not the way I wanted to go. I wanted all of the paper gone. Honestly, all you need to do is saturate it and then peel it off. You can use a scraper in some areas that are a little bit more difficult, but because I had 3 other areas that needed to have wallpaper removal, my husband did suggest that we hire somebody because not only did we need it removed, but we needed to texture the walls as well because the wallpaper was directly onto our sheetrock and our whole house has a texture that we wanted to match. Even before adding paint, you can already tell it is so much brighter just by removing the wallpaper. Now from here, we could decide to go with a lighter paint or a darker paint, but we really wanted to open it up and make it lighter. And painting is something we could absolutely do ourselves and save ourselves some money. So keeping with the theme of brightening up the space and keeping it light, we wanted to go with a light color that really reflected light, and we chose Sherwin White Duck, and we absolutely love this color. Anytime you are working on a room, whether it's a remodel or an update, you always need to have a little bit of a budget in case something goes wrong. For us, that meant we needed to replace this window because it had been shattered, and even though it had nothing to do with the update, it was still something that we needed to take care of. A couple of things that I really liked about the company that we hired is first we got a general quote over the phone, but then they came out and gave us a very specific quote in person. After that, they ordered the window, they installed it, and then they billed us and we paid them. So we didn't give them any money in exchange until after the work was completed. So we also needed to go ahead and replace the faucets because this faucet was constantly dripping. We couldn't get it to stop anymore, as well as the rust around it. Honestly, my husband had to saw it off because this has been here for 21 years. It was time for it to go. It had served us well. But what I didn't expect was how much larger my sink would feel once we added a new faucet with a taller neck. I felt like my sink grew twice the size. What an impact that it made. Once the foundation of the bathroom was set and ready to go, it was really about making the bathroom look pretty. And I'm not gonna lie, but the pretty parts of it are just as important as the bones of the bathroom, in my opinion. I have this stool that I've had for a while. It is a 3-legged stool of death. And if you follow me on Instagram, I have admitted when I have fallen off the stool. Yes, please do not comment on how I should not be climbing on a 3-legged stool. I'm well aware. My husband has been telling me for a while it needs to go. So I have been on the hunt for a stool that I want to replace it to put at my vanity. And I walked into the Reupholster and saw this. The most beautiful antique bench. I was so excited to get it into my car and get it home. First, I went ahead and I unscrewed the seat because I'm going to be reupholstering that in just a bit. But first, I gave my attention to the wood. I'm actually gonna strip this and then bleach it. Now, I'm gonna be really honest. If you wanted to just paint something, it's a lot faster, but this was something that I've really wanted to do for a while. And I plan on keeping this bench for a very long time, so I was willing to put in the time and the effort. So all I did was paint the stripper on, and to give you an idea, the stripper is like, this is very specific, the consistency of liquid gum. Do y'all remember that? Do they even sell that anymore? I don't even know, but it doesn't have like a really, it doesn't have a bad smell at all. You can actually do this indoors. I don't recommend it because it's kind of messy, But once I got it brushed on into one area, I just took some plastic wrap, wrapped it around, and made sure that I covered the entire thing. Now, the reason why you add the plastic wrap is so that it won't dry out, because you want this to stay wet so it will continue to work. You can check to see if the stripper is working as early as 30 minutes, or you can wait up to like 24 hours because that's how long it stays wet and active. I only waited about 2 hours before I came back and I was ready to start scraping the stain off. Now, I will tell you, this is where it actually gets really messy. So I just use a paint scraper, and then you want to have like a container that you can like scrape it into, maybe like a paper towel that you can wipe it off on. This is a little bit of a labor of love, especially when you're dealing with something that has rounded legs with all the details. If you have something that's a little bit more flat, it's definitely easier and it'll go a whole lot faster. After I did my initial scraping, I went ahead and I brought my hose over and I hosed it off to see if I could get a little bit more of the stain off. And then I also used a toothbrush at the same time, and I scrubbed in certain areas and was trying to scrub the stain off. Then I went back in with a scraper, removed more of the stain. I used some steel wool as like a sponge to help me scrub it and get some of the remaining stain off, especially in some of those more detailed areas. Now, it would get kind of gunky and I would have to hose it off and then go back in and then hose it off. You would see the process that I had to go back and forth. And so by the time I was done scrubbing it, that piece of steel wool was done and ready for the trash. Remember, this is how it started and we've already seen progress, but I wasn't done yet. So here I just have regular household bleach. I put it into a spray bottle and I'm just squirting it all over the entire bench, leaving it alone until it dries. It only takes about 30 minutes, especially the day I have it outside because it was so windy. Once it was dried, I went back out, gave it another good squirt all over. After it dried this time, I went in and I hand sanded it in a few areas, making sure if there was any area that I thought that maybe there was still some stain that I wasn't happy with, I just sanded that area off. I went ahead and I bleached it 2 more rounds, and then I brought out my electric sander and used a 220 grit sandpaper. You can still hand sand it, but you definitely want to sand it at the end because all the pores of the wood are open and it's coarse, and you want to smooth it out. You want that nice smooth finish. So it is important that you do sand it. It only took me about a minute to sand it. It was quick and easy, and then this was all done, and it was just time for me to reupholster the seat. I was so excited to get my hands on this seat and see exactly what was underneath it. Now, this is not the original reupholstering. This one was actually probably done in about the 80s. So I went ahead and I removed the staples, and then you can see the original reupholster fabric right here. And they actually had it tacked down with tacks instead of staples, and I went ahead and removed those, and you can see the original batting, which honestly I think is pretty cool, but I did need to go ahead and replace it. And I'm using a serrated knife to cut some 1-inch foam to pad the seat, and then I'm using just some scissors to cut some polyester batting just slightly larger than the seat itself, and then some upholstery fabric that I picked up at Hobby Lobby that I will be covering it. I think this fabric that I chose is beautiful. To put this all together, I'm using my Sherwin Trigger Fire staple gun. Now, you've seen me use this before. I used it when I helped my sister do her classroom. I also use it on projects all of the time. What makes this staple gun different than any other staple gun is the ability to use the trigger. So with this little knob, you can have it on normal and then just use the lever on top, or you can turn it and use the trigger underneath with your pointer finger, and it makes it so simple. So you can use it like a regular staple gun, or you can go ahead and, if it's set on trigger, push down the lever on top and then adjust whatever you need to. And then because it's so simple to push that little trigger, you can use your non-dominant hand even, or even if you have a child helping you, you can then just push that when you're ready, and voila, you have a staple in place. Something else that is pretty cool is that the Sherwin Trigger Fire is now carried by Home Depot. You can find them in select stores, but definitely online. And this is the one that I have, and the price, you guys, is fantastic. It is definitely something I would suggest that you have in your toolbox. When you're upholstering a seat, you're gonna get the best results when you apply one staple on each side in the middle, making sure that your fabric is taut. So go ahead and apply those staples, and then you're gonna work your way down a side, making sure that you are keeping that fabric nice and taut, that there are no wrinkles on the front as you are going. This is where that trigger really comes in handy, because you can really use your hands and then hold the fabric while you are just gently having to use that trigger, and you already have it set and ready to go. Now, once you hit a corner, open up that fabric and pull it straight down so that's nice and flush with the wood. Staple it, and then you're going to cross it over and then staple it on each side, kind of like you would if you were wrapping a package. You can absolutely leave it here, or you can do what I did, and to finish it off, I went ahead and I took the fabric and I folded it under and stapled it to give it a nice clean edge. The last thing to do is to screw the seat back onto the bench. There are 4 areas to do that, and originally I only had 2 screws and I had to replace those anyway, so I did make sure I had 4 screws to screw it all the way around to make sure it was nice and secure. This was definitely a labor of love, but a piece I plan on having years to come and worth all of the effort and time that I put into it. West Elm has these beautiful tissue boxes and waistbands, but the prices are definitely more than I want to pay. So instead, I picked up this tissue box while I was thrifting for just a couple of dollars, and I used a trash bin that I already had on hand and a can of white spray paint, and created my own beautiful white tissue box and waistband. Thrifting and upcycling is such a great way of saving money. Believe it or not, I actually found this $200 mirror for only $8 at a thrift store. Another money-saving idea is to repurpose glass jars. So here I am using these large glass jars to hold soap, loofahs, and Epsom salts, all things that I use in the bathroom, but also make a beautiful aesthetic. I still needed a couple more items for my bathroom, so I headed to Ross, and the first thing I saw was this clear caddy, and I knew it would be perfect to place some items that I like to leave out on my counter. So I snatched it up because I couldn't beat that price. And then I saw these rugs that I knew would be great, and what I really liked about them is they could wash them because they didn't have that rubber backing, and that is such a big deal to me because let's just face it, I have a lot of hair, and if you can't wash it, it shouldn't be in my bathroom. And I love the finished outcome of it. The last thing that I put in my bathroom to give it that spa-like feel were the succulents. And the reason why I chose succulents and a fern is because they are really hard to kill, and I'm near a water source. If I don't kill them, neither would you. Hard to believe that this is where we started, but with a small little budget and a few little tweaks, we were able to create this, and I absolutely love it. If you want to see another refresh, make sure you check out this video. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!